What if I told you that your favorite reality TV show is actually more than just entertainment? That it is in fact a modern day panopticon. As some of you may know, my content centers around fashion and lifestyle, and I occasionally vlog about my life abroad in the Netherlands as a South African expat. I've always been fascinated by the world of media, pop culture, social media, and just kind of like the power dynamics that come along with it, as well as our relationship with it. So I decided to make a series about it. Welcome to the brew. If you would like a little bit more of a backstory on the name, definitely check out the description below. I thought it would be so much fun to kick things off with a reality TV dating show called Love Island. On the surface, Love Island is a sun-soaked romance that is pretty much set in like a luxurious and gorgeous villa. This is where the contestants, known to you and I as islanders, stay for about, I think, 6 to 8 weeks in hopes of finding love. The show keeps millions of viewers glued to their screens as they vote for their favorite couples. However, we could dive a little deeper and argue that these islanders aren't just fighting for love. They are essentially, and most importantly, perhaps even subconsciously, creating a persona that will help build social currency during their time in the villa and benefit them when they leave it. It is essentially a digital age panopticon, where the gaze of the camera and the judgment of the audience kind of dictate their every move. Naturally, first things first, what is a panopticon? The term panopticon was originally proposed by an English philosopher named Jeremy Bentham. I might be butchering his last name, so we'll just call him Jeremy. Jeremy was essentially questioning the experience of being watched. The panopticon theory states that people can be controlled if they believe that they are under constant surveillance, even if no one is watching them. In Jeremy's mind, he kind of envisioned the panopticon to be kind of like a circular prison design. In essence, the subjects or inmates are aware that they are being watched, but they can't see when. In this system of surveillance, the subjects or inmates, much like our islanders in this case, are aware that they are being watched. They would ultimately start acting the way that they want to be perceived. The term is further popularized by a French historian named Michel Foucault, who kind of argued that people's behaviors are more likely to be manipulated when they know that they are being watched. This is usually out of fear of punishment. In the modern day, surveillance has become a form of entertainment. I want you to think of shows like Big Brother, Jersey Shore, Keeping Up with the Kardashians. While those are mostly American shows, there has been one exception to this that has kind of grown exponentially over the past couple of years. That show is known as Love Island UK. There's a few things that we should probably get out of the way when we discuss Love Island. Firstly, not a lot of people actually go in there with the intention of finding love. I think that might have been the thing in the very beginning, but you know, as we've seen with how famous some of these people get, I would argue that a lot of people actually just go in there chasing clout. Secondly, it mostly takes place in a very luxurious villa, so just get the idea of a conventional island out of your mind because it's so far from that. Like, it doesn't give off like Survivor vibes at all. Then thirdly, Love Island wasn't always known as Love Island. In fact, when the show first aired in 2005, it was called Celebrity Love Island. The ratings were pretty bad, so they rebranded and came back as Love Island in 2015. In a nutshell, celebrities were out and normal people who exceeded society's beauty standards were in. Typically, they do show heterosexual and cisgender couples, but there have been a couple of exceptions to this. Mostly the couples stay in a stunning villa in Mallorca, a Spanish island. Here they stay, they're secluded from pretty much everyone else. They don't have access to their social media, they don't have contact with their families, they only have contact with each other in the villa as well as the production team. They stay there, they eat there, they date one another, you know, all in hopes of finding love, and the winner gets a £50,000 prize. Now the catch is, in order to stay in the villa and in order to win, you have to be in a couple or you are at risk of being dumped from the island. Usually islanders who are exclusive or who go as far as to become boyfriend and girlfriend on the show typically go on to win the show, or at least get very close to winning. It wouldn't be a reality TV dating show without a couple of twists and turns and a lot of conflict, so naturally they do face a couple of challenges, namely bombshells entering and casa amor. Now, bombshells are essentially people who kind of come in the show at any given point in time, and their main objective is to find someone to couple up with. This typically leads to couples breaking up, people being dumped from the island, and someone else replacing them. Then you have casa amor, where men and women are split and new islanders are introduced to test their connections. So let's say the women are the ones staying in the original villa, they'll introduce new men so that the women can form connections. Same thing happens with the men at the other villa, but with women. I think Casa Amor is not even that long, it might be like 3 or 4 days. This means that they can either choose to break up their original couple or go with someone new. The show is highly popular. It has broken records with more than 6 million viewers, which ultimately establishes itself as one of the most successful TV programs. Next, I kind of want to dive into surveillance as entertainment because there are parallels to the panopticon and what we are seeing happening in Love Island. I want to explore the islanders' behavior, I want to talk a little bit about their mental health, and I also want to talk about how strategic they can be be in their relationships. It is no secret that the islanders are under constant surveillance because you and I are the ones that are watching them. Cameras literally capture their every move 24/7, 7 days a week. I have heard that there are times where they're not actually filming, so I know that they do get a little bit of a break, but for the most part, everything that they're doing is being captured. This includes not just the visible cameras, but also hidden cameras and hidden microphones. The most interesting part of this is that it's also in spaces that would typically be considered private, such as bedrooms and bathrooms. Now, similar to the panopticon, where the prisoners or inmates or subjects, whatever we want to call them, are aware that they are being watched 24/7, so are our islanders. A similarity is that they don't know when they're being watched, but the biggest difference is that they don't know what is being shown to us as viewers. This awareness of constant observation naturally influences their behavior. I would argue that this probably makes them a little bit self-conscious and maybe even more strategic in their decision-making process. I would also argue that there might even be like, you know, this paradox of freedom. Ultimately, at the end of every episode, we are voting for our favorite couples, our favorite islanders, and I do think that that also has an impact on how, you know, they tend to react or kind of like redefine or even create their personas. In essence, I think that we as the audience are subtly kind of coercing them into becoming the sort of people that they think might be likable to us as an audience. So when I say that there's a paradox of freedom, I mean it kind of in the way that, you know, there is this illusion of freedom because they will ultimately be themselves in the villa. But once they receive the feedback that we give them, I do feel like there is a subtle change. While the illusion of freedom is kind of maintained throughout the entirety of the show, under every single action or like decision process or, you know, reaction that these islanders have, there's always going to be a little bit of judgment from us as the audience, whether it's our votes or the comments that we leave on social media, whether it's the things that we repost, or even the islanders that we decide we want to give a platform to. Like, think about it, right? Naturally, with so many cameras and eyes on you, and you being aware of that, you might even feel some kind of pressure to perform, to entertain. You know, conflict and confrontation feed it. I actually think it would be very natural for people to step out of character in order to stay on the show longer, because you're already aware of what's at stake. Just to drag that point out a little bit further, I would also argue that there are some islanders who might even kind of create a persona, specifically people who have never been in front of the camera before, but also on the other hand, people who have been on the camera before, or, you know, change a little bit of their branding for when they get out of the villa. I do think that a lot of people go in there with the intention of growing their platforms. It ultimately aligns with the concept of the panopticon, where the possibility of being observed kind of leads to self-regulation and maybe even changes in your behavior. Now, when it comes to actual relationships, islanders can be very strategic. We have seen this in their little fire pit meetings when, you know, they have to vote someone out, choose the strongest or the weakest couple. Sometimes islanders even choose to save their friends, so they might not even be in a romantic couple, they will just be in a couple with someone that they don't want to see go. Relationships and alliances are everything in the show, especially when it comes down to the person that you might share a romantic connection with, because ultimately that becomes the person that you might go on to winning the show with. That person is also going to be very crucial for your survival on the show. Other islanders need to like you guys as a couple, other islanders need to like you individually, and people, well, the viewers, you know, us, also have to like the couple enough to want them to continue on. There is no privacy here. Relationships are turned into public performances. Because although the islanders have to navigate genuine emotions, they also have to consider how we as the audience and their fellow islanders will perceive them. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of, you know, do this series, or specifically this episode, was because there's one thing that occurs in every Love Island that I have ever personally watched, and that is movie night. If you're unfamiliar with it, movie night is essentially a segment of the show where the islanders watch themselves. There's popcorn, they have their little drinks, and on the screen there's kind of like these little titles. So typically the islanders participate in a quiz and the winning team gets to decide the movie title. Typically it's very small snippets of something that has been recorded, but most of the time the other islanders don't know that this actually happened, or they might have gotten like a little bit of information about that from, like, you know, one of their other islander friends. But seeing it is obviously very different for them. Naturally, this would have a major psychological impact on the islanders, and it is essentially a meta panopticon. Not only does it heighten the drama between the islanders, it can also break trust. You know, like, islanders are kind of confronted with like the discrepancy between the public and their private personas. And then what I find the most interesting is that the reactions of the islanders to these movie segments kind of like dictate how they're going to progress in the villa. And by that I mean that we as the audience obviously perceive the way that they react, right? Like, you know, we might think of them differently, good or bad, based on how they choose to react to something that they have seen. And, you know, based on our comments, our engagement, even our votes, they receive that feedback and they can adjust their behavior accordingly. Once again, we kind of are back in that loop of surveillance and social currency. In Love Island specifically, social currency kind of, you know, refers to the value and I guess the status that islanders would acquire based on their likability and their popularity by not only us as the audience but also their fellow islanders. The thing is, how popular they are, how approachable they seem, how likable they are, their friendships with other islanders in the villa, and most importantly, obviously their romantic connections, also have an impact on their lives once they leave the villa. Islanders with a strong social currency often have a very high following outside of the villa. Keep in mind, they are like completely secluded, right? They don't know what's going on in the outside world until they get done from the villa or the show ends. So while they are in the villa, their social media following is going to grow or is going to decline based on their actions. And naturally, their social currency can lead to a lot of opportunities, brand deals, brand sponsorships. Some of them can even have their own businesses, you know, their relationships as well. Everything is impacted by this. A lot of the islanders also quit their jobs after they're done with the show, and many popular islanders either become hosts or influencers. Some of the most popular brand deals and collaborations that I've seen, you know, once these islanders leave the villa typically include Pretty Little Thing, I Saw It First, or Polly, and then you also have other things like Ann Summers and eBay. We've mostly seen very explosive followings, you know, with the UK kind of islanders. Keep in mind, the UK was like the OG Love Island. Obviously, it has now branched out to Love Island Australia, France, the USA, even in South Africa. In the UK, however, Molly-Mae Hague is one of the most successful influencers. She is undoubtedly the UK's top influencer, mostly because of the show. Other islanders that have had, you know, exponential growth because of the show, I would also argue, are Danny Dyer, Maura Higgins, Tommy Fury, Ekansu, and Alex George. In the United States of America, Leah Kateb is probably the most prominent influencer, or I guess she's an influencer now, like the most prominent islander to have emerged from the US shows. At the time of this video, she has accumulated 3.2 million followers on Instagram. Before she went into the villa, she only had 6,000. Her 3.2 million following is bigger than the Love Island USA's actual account, which only has 1.2 million. If we really look at it from all sides, you know, social currency holds so much weight. It is about power and influence that extends beyond the ecosystem of the Love Island villa. Oftentimes, as we've also seen with, you know, the power of social media, their followers, aka people like you and I, might actually be contributing to their financial gain. But with every pro, there's always a con. With this massive following, we also see a lot of public judgment. Unlike the original panopticon theory, where the inmates or the subjects or whatever we decided to call them are kind of being, you know, observed by an unseen authority, in the Love Island villa, you and I take that role. The show and the producers kind of give us the opportunity to get involved. They give us the opportunity to vote for our favorite couples, our favorite islanders. And on the flip side, the islanders who kind of are placed at the bottom, naturally they are going to change their strategy so that they are not at the bottom in terms of, you know, whatever things we are voting for. This also makes me think more about social media and, you know, the relationship with cancel culture that we have, especially when movie night happens, because then the islanders can kind of see how we might be perceiving them. With the rise of cancel culture, it's not just islanders or influencers or public figures with massive followings that might be scared of saying or doing the wrong thing and receiving backlash for it. It's regular people like you and I as well. However, it's also regular people like you and I who might be contributing to this comment section and contributing to that cycle of cancel culture. Personally, I see this as a major con of the Love Island show because I think that this can put a lot of people into genuine psychological distress. Like, at the end of the day, everyone's human, right? Like, it's not that deep. It's a TV show. However, the psychological impact should not be ignored. Because, like, literally, imagine everyone and their mother dragging you to filth on the internet because you didn't couple up with someone that they wanted you to couple up with, or you didn't say something, or you forgot to mention something. Like, I could not. I've been watching a lot of the TikToks, seeing the comment sections on some of the islanders' profiles, and it does make me wonder, like, you know, more about the psychological impact, ethical considerations of the show, and even how, you know, we've created this sort of parasocial relationship with them. It also makes me wonder if the islanders kind of have like an identity crisis in the villa as well as when they leave it, simply because there might be a pressure to perform and maintain a likable persona, so you basically don't get dumped from the island. I think they should also provide better mental health resources for the contestants or islanders after they go into the show, and fully be transparent about what they can expect going into it, so that they have a better idea of what it is that they're actually signing up for. So many islanders are targeted after the show, and sometimes even during the show, and we as viewers are often encouraged to participate. However, we should be doing that in a way that is mindful. Very demure, very mindful. No, but seriously, like, we should be doing that in a way that is respectful of the islanders and their mental well-being. That was a lot of yapping, but I hope that you can understand how the impact of surveillance and social currency can actually, you know, extend beyond these digital realms that we have created. Love Island isn't just about the aesthetic bikinis, the cute water bottles, the stunning locations, or the fun little relationships. It is a digital age panopticon where social surveillance and social currency shape every single interaction. From the pressure to kind of, you know, perform and maintain a likable persona, to being under the watchful eyes of millions and millions of people around the globe, to the alliances that you may form and the couples that you might find yourself in, everything is a make or break journey. I also feel like this show in particular kind of is the perfect example of how reality TV manipulates behavior for entertainment. I think the creepiest thing for me personally is that as viewers, you and I are not just spectators. We are part of this panopticon. We are shaping every reaction, action, and interaction through likes, votes, and comments. As I said before, I really love media and media culture, and I think that one of the most fascinating aspects of all of this is how, you know, people utilize social media platforms in order to kind of gain financial independence. I also feel like reality TV can be very beneficial in kind of getting an insight into human behavior. To me, it's always been fascinating to see the impact of the digital world on your real life one. And that was one of the things that kind of inspired today's little episode. Or little, I yapped a lot. If you like these kinds of videos, make sure to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. I would love to hear your thoughts and encourage conversation between us. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.